Hi everybody, thanks for coming. This is really exciting. I just want to take a minute to introduce you to my much better half. This is my wife, Sangeeta. She is from New Delhi in India, and we met while we were teaching school in the Sultanate of Oman. We've been married for 12 years, and although it's a big challenge for her, she is actually an immigrant to the United States, and we had a really exciting this month because after 3 years, we've finally been able to apply for her N-400 form and her citizenship. So immigration is a big part of my ticket, and I just want you to see what American immigration should really be like. Sangeeta loves America. She has always loved America. She loves our president. She knows so much about the country. And when I met her, I found it hard to believe that she wasn't an American already. But when it comes to immigration, these are the kinds of people we need. We need people who will come here and be kind and helpful to other people, and people who love America and love our democracy. So I'm going to ask Sangeeta to take a step aside here, and I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes before I let you go and tell you a little bit more about myself and my candidacy. Thank you for showing up here, Sangeeta. All right, so if you don't mind, I do a lot of writing, so I'm going to put on my spectacles, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about myself. I grew up in the town of Sequim over on the peninsula. It's a small town, so I grew up knowing most everybody in the town, and I grew up understanding and developing hometown values that mean things like service to my country, kindness to others, helping, and charity. Now, I've also written 5 books. The first book I wrote was called My Year in Oman. I have Another Year in Oman, Killing Time in Saudi Arabia, Deceptions of the Ages, and my latest book is The Rainier Paradigm. So these are some of my works. If you'd like to know more about me, the best thing to do is to just look at one of my books. So I served in the military after high school. I joined the Army and I served in the 82nd Airborne. I had Special Forces training, and I served from 1982 until 1986. After I left the Army, I went to school on what was called the Veterans Educational Assistance Program, and I went to Peninsula College in Port Angeles, and I also attended Washington State University, where I graduated with a bachelor's degree in history. After that, I was interested in being a teacher, so I went to Alaska and obtained my master's degree at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. And I taught in Alaska for a while. I came back to the Seattle area and taught for a while. After September 11th, 2001, after the attacks, I decided that the best thing for me to do was to go and teach in the Sultanate of Oman, which is a lovely country on the tip of the Arabian Peninsula. And I loved it so much, I spent 7 years actually teaching there, and then I also taught on military contracts in Saudi Arabia. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this and why this is all relevant is because you have a field of candidates to choose from, but I'm going to have to ask you, what candidate that you're looking at has military experience, especially in the elite forces? Now, we have to send our elite forces every day, and I know what those guys are going through. I know their lives. I know their families. I know what they have to deal with. And it's very uncomfortable, and it's a very difficult situation that we put them in, and we need to respect the fact that they are in danger and that we are going to support them, and we will never, ever send them anywhere where they're going to be killed for something as cheesy as the Democrats' political agenda, which we've seen so many times in the creation of ISIS, what happened in the debacle in Benghazi, of which all of my opponent, Maria Cantwell, presided over and sat silently and did nothing and said nothing, while our own ambassador, Chris Stevens, was actually brutally murdered. So I don't want to send our forces anywhere unless there's a very good reason. And my litmus test is, if I wouldn't go, I'm not sending them. So that's my military experience, and that's why I feel that, and also because many of my friends, in fact, more of my friends speak Arabic now than speak English. So that's another thing that I have and where I have an edge over my opponent and anybody else in the field, is that I've been and lived overseas in many different countries, and I visited many different countries. Half of my in-laws are from Delhi and India. They work in UAE. They work in the UK. So I have ties all over the world, and I have friends all over the world. And I can go into Saudi Arabia tomorrow, and I will have friends there meet me at the airport. I can go to the Sultanate of Oman tomorrow, and I can have friends there meet me at the airport. I can go to India tomorrow, and I can have my family meet me at the airport. I don't know how many of our field or my opponent can say that, but my ties around the world are personal. They're not theoretical. So I just want you to understand that about why I am qualified, at least in the area of foreign relations, to be a senator in the United States Senate. Now, there is a problem in our country that I need to talk to you about, and it is a huge problem, and this is the problem of immigration. Our immigration policy, which originally started to let people come that were seeking economic and religious freedom to this country, but that has changed so much. Our immigration policy now is what I call divide and conquer. Because what they're doing now is they are bringing so many people into this country who have no intention whatsoever, ever, of integrating and becoming part of American society. We see that it has broken up the culture in Europe, and we've seen that it's starting to break up the culture in Canada, and it's starting to break up the culture in the United States. Because we're allowing people here that have no interest whatsoever in becoming Americans, becoming part of our culture. They just want to come here and make problems so that they can take over and impose their view and their religion on everybody else, which is the most un-American thing that has ever happened in this country. And I just want to point out, in the Constitution it says, the Congress shall not establish a religion. Now, when that was written, the Congress only knew about the Christian religions because there was Presbyterianism and Protestantism and Catholicism and all these different competing Christian religions, and that's why that was written in the Constitution. They had no idea about a religion that is sent on taking over the entire world, and they had no idea that there was a religion that would take away the rights of women and basically leave them sitting in a house for the rest of their life until they got married, and when they got married, their only fate is to have children. I'm not going to push that onto the next generations of Americans, and I think we seriously, I know what it sounds like, and I have very many friends that are from the Muslim world, and personally, I would prefer to be living over in Oman with them, but I'm not going to have them impose that kind of culture on our children and on our grandchildren, because that is depriving half of humanity of what we could have as far as authors and engineers and doctors and scientists and people that contribute, just wiped out because of their sex. I do not believe in that, and I will not tolerate it for a minute. And the liberals, who are so-called liberals in the Democratic Party, the only reason they're interested in that is because they're getting money and they're getting contributions from people who want to come and enslave the women in this country. And I will not allow that. I will not. So that is one of the reasons I feel that it's important that I need to get into the Senate, because I don't want my descendants to be subject to the kind of beatings that I've seen in Saudi Arabia for women who had their hair partially uncovered or who were out without their husband. And it happens a lot. And we don't want to see that in our country. Now, Abraham Lincoln once said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Now, what we see in our immigration policy is nothing but dividing the house. So I'm not going to go into this too much more, but our immigration policy has nothing to do with helping our country. It has everything to do with dividing the house so that this house cannot stand. And we are not going to stand for a divided house. If you want to divide our house, if you want to come here and be a racist and say bad things about Christians and the home culture, then you seriously need to think about what you're doing here, because we're going to think about your presence here for sure. Now, I believe that education, love, and tolerance are the only keys that are going to help us to survive both in this century and in the centuries to come. And let me say that again. Education, love, and tolerance. Now, a litmus test for you to apply is when you see a culture, you need to ask them, do they have education? Is education prized with this culture? Is love prized with this culture? And is tolerance prized with this culture? Because if these things are not met, and if you don't say yes to love, education, and tolerance, then people who practice these kinds of cultures have no place in the United States. Now, why else am I running for the Senate? Because simply, I have trained for this all my life. I have a very extensive background in history. If you read my book, Deceptions of the Ages, you know that I can pretty much tell you everything that has happened in the world from the beginning of history until today. And I can give you a pretty general summary. But I also know what's happened to this country, and I know that many of the promises that are given every time we have an election are never met. And I have nothing to gain. I'm not in the Senate to get rich. I'll never be rich. I grew up very poor. I have no interest in money. I have an interest in serving this country and in serving you, the guy who gets up and goes to work every day, and the woman who raises kids, and the woman who runs a company, and the guy who has a small business that he's struggling to survive because he has to pay so many taxes and he can't compete with corporations. I'm running because we have a lying media that never tells us the truth, and we need to do something about that. I'm running because we have these tech companies that have become complete monopolies because they are in sync with our deep state and our security apparatus that was all created as a counter to our sorry immigration policies. So we are going to re-examine all of these, because we contribute so much to these companies. We just need to pull their funding, and we need to allow for more diversity and more competition as far as these tech company goes. And certainly we need to stop these tech companies from spying on American citizens. Now they keep saying that, oh well, we need these intelligence operations going because we have so many terrorists in the country. Well, I'll have a solution for you. Stop immigration. Stop letting the terrorists in the country, and then we don't have to spend this money, and then we don't have to worry about somebody killing us while we're going to the store or attending our school. So, the next reason I'm running is because 2 years ago, I was injured at work, and I'm still standing here on a painful knee, and doctors have gotten rich, the Department of L&I, their employees, they get paid, and you know what? I'm still broken. So the government does not work. And I want to make sure that, especially people like me that are veterans, that get injured, that they get the respect and the treatment that they need. Now, I have no confidence ever that I'm not going to be handicapped. But I just want to make sure that what was done to me by the Washington State Department of L&I is not done to anybody else. And that's why I'm running for the United States Senate, because I'm fighting for the working man, because I know what it is to be a working man. I've been a working man all my life. So, very quickly now, I want to tell you my 12-item agenda. I don't plan on making a lot of long campaign speeches, but these are the 12 things that must happen while I'm in the Senate. And if they don't happen, well, you can pretty much say goodbye to our country. You can say goodbye to democracy. And what we're going to have after this is going to be an AI dictatorship where everything that you say and do is monitored, and your life and everything that you and your children do is going to be determined by a computer and a small faction of people who run these tech companies. And I'm not going to let that happen. So here are my 12-item agenda. Number 1, forbid U.S. government borrowing. The more the government borrows, the less your money is worth. The more the government borrows, the more danger that we're in, because we have to keep selling. Number 2, we need free tuition at all public universities. free tuition at all public universities. All these people that go to college in China and in India and in the third world, they get educations for basically free. And we have to go into debt, thousands and thousands of dollars. And then when we get out, they give them our jobs because they went to school for free and they don't have any student loans. And they can get a loan for a house, or they can come and pay for a house with their cash, because it's a Chinese or it's a communist country they're coming from, or they've stolen or they've run a sweatshop in India or somewhere, and they've come here with lots of cash. But we can't compete with that because we're all just working stiffs. So it's time that we level the playing field for our students. Free tuition at public universities. Number 3, end the war on marijuana right now. We have put so many Hispanics, blacks, African Americans, everybody, poor whites, everybody that the government sees as disposable in prison so that they can make profits off this stupid war on drugs. There are more deaths, and I'm not going to go into all these stupid statistics, but there are so many deaths from alcohol, cigarettes, compared to what, nothing from the use of marijuana. And everybody in this country has been using it for years. And the problem is Americans are so hypocritical and they are so afraid of speaking up for their rights they won't say anything. Well, I'm not afraid to speak up. And when I get to the Senate, the first thing I'm going to do is pass legislation that says any money taken in by the federal government from the sale of marijuana must go to the field of education, and it must go to free tuition. So, number 4, we need a complete and total immediate immigration freeze. Now, I'm not talking about guys that are in the service or working overseas that get married. They can bring their families home. But we are being overrun in our southern border. Donald Trump did not, and it's not his fault, but I'll explain this more to you later in a different video, but this immigration thing is very complicated, and this has absolutely nothing to do with racism. This has everything to do with corporations are trying to pull these people into our country under the name of immigration and liberality and progressiveness, because they want to replace you and your job with even cheaper, even more uneducated workers, and they're going to kick you basically out of a job. So where does that leave you, and where does that leave America? Well, look around you right now. Look at your city, and look how many homeless people are in that city, because these people have basically just given up. Now, I'm not going to let our government bring people into this country and replace them. According to Jeff Sessions, we have over 11 million illegal aliens. I am for stationing the military on the border, and their mission is going to be to interdict and intercept. Interdict and intercept every single person coming across the border. And if you come across the border illegally and you commit any kind of violent crime in our country, we will try you before a military tribunal, and most likely we are going to execute you. Now, that may sound very harsh, but you know what? What would happen if 11 million Americans showed up in Mexico or in China or in Africa? They would kill them, right? So why does the United States and Europe have to keep taking all of these people in? It's absolutely ludicrous, it's ridiculous, and it's just a way for them to destroy our democracy, and we're not going to stand for it. So again, 100% zero tolerance for immigration until we get this figured out. And I also want to add, my stance on immigration comes from, I went to a Trump rally in 2016 with my poor wife in Everett, and we were attacked by people from Mexicans, by African Americans, attacked in line. And the news cameras just sat there, and the police just sat there, and people came up and ran at me and my wife. And everybody that came to see the Trump rally was standing there peacefully while people are attacking us. And then this lying media puts on this narrative of how these Trump people are so violent when we're being attacked in line. We're American citizens trying to exercise our right to democracy, and being attacked by people from other countries that don't even have democracies. Get them out. We just have to get them out, because I will never tolerate that. And I was so embarrassed that I bring my wife to this country that she is so proud to be in, and I have these illegal immigrants or whoever they are attacking her for trying to exercise or being part of our democracy. It's a shame, and it's going to end. And if you are impeding on anybody's right to democracy, I am going to make sure there are laws passed that you will never see the light of day outside of a jail cell if you're an American citizen for at least 10 years. Democracy is the only thing we have. It's the only thing that keeps us together. And if we can't practice democracy, we have nothing. We are like a banana republic in Panama or in Bolivia or in China or any place else where people just walk around like a drone because they have no freedom and they have no control over their future. All right, number 5. I should probably move a little bit faster. I think my camera is going to go. All right, number 5, smart cards, smart labor cards for migrants attached to employer bank accounts. We do need migrant labor, that is absolutely for sure, because of the failures of our public school system. So that's accepted. What we do is we let them come in the country, they're here to work, and then go home. They get a labor card, and that labor card is attached to their employer's bank account. Schools, jails, municipality taxes, anything that that person is costing the local or the federal government is going to be paid by the employer. Now, the rationale behind this is that I want to make it so expensive for these employers to hire this cheaper labor that they'll just go ahead and train an American worker to do the job. And you can look at any candidate and any solution that anybody has to offer, and none is as realistic as that one. Now, I worked in Saudi Arabia and Oman for 13 years, and I had a labor card. And when I was finished working, they said, because I'm a Christian, you have to go out. You cannot stay in the country. In fact, if you're not part of that country, you can't stay in the country anyway. But they said you must go out of the country. And so that's how we'll do it in our country, just like everybody else's. All right, number 6, I want to have mandatory sentencing. If you hire an illegal alien that comes here with no documentation, no labor card, guess what? He's not going to jail, you are. You're going to go to jail for 5 years, and we're going to seize your assets. But there will be mandatory 5-year sentencing for hiring undocumented workers. And that will eliminate the need for a wall, eliminate the need for all of these expensive programs, because we're going to eliminate the demand, just like they did with the war on drugs. Okay, we're going to establish English as the U.S. official language. We're not going to end up like Babylon. We've all heard the story of the Tower of Babel and how people spoke all these languages until they just couldn't communicate anymore. Well, that goes back to this divide and conquer thing. If you come to the United States, you have to speak English. And if you live in the United States, there is enough technology now through translation apps and all that stuff. The U.S. government does not have to spend millions of dollars every year on translators. That is such a huge waste of money, and we are going to stop, because it's ridiculous to let anybody into our country that doesn't speak English. So, and I mean, I don't even have to say how stupid that is. Number 8, I want to break up tech monopolies. And again, we're going to defund this deep state surveillance platform like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Twitter. Now, these were all started and originated and received massive funding from our intelligence agencies. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull the plug on the funding from intelligence agencies. Now, Microsoft, as I've said many times, was charged with an antitrust lawsuit in 1995. They made a deal with the corrupt Clinton administration, and they never broke up Microsoft. So Bill Gates was able to basically, excuse me, he was able to basically have a monopolized company that took over the world and sent their software all throughout the world, and there is nobody to uncheck or to check that. And then he was able to make all this money, which he uses now to defeat the United States by by importing. And if you go around Redmond, where I am now, he has imported so many people from other countries because he won't hire Americans that it is just ridiculous. And these people have come here not to work and go home. They think this is their right. They think this is their country now, and that the whites and everybody else here, they don't belong here, and they're just going to push us out. Well, I have a different answer for you, and that is, if you don't want to come here to be an American, then don't come here. But if you come here because you think you're going to take over, because you come from a Muslim group or some other racist group, forget it. We don't need that in this country, and we're not going to have it, and we will not tolerate it. So we're going to break up Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Twitter. Number 9, we are going to include Asians. This includes Indians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Thai, Filipinos, Jews, Arabs, and Caucasians are all going to be included as affirmative action protected classes. Again, we will include Asians, Jews, Arabs, Caucasians as affirmative action protected classes. Number 10, we will have a $20 minimum wage at every corporation that has 500 plus employees. Now, why is that? Because corporations, like take my hometown of Sequim. Sequim used to have all these little businesses of restaurants and small businessmen that plied their trade until McDonald's came in and put them all out of business. So now if you go into my hometown, all of these corporations have come in, they've destroyed the middle class, they pay people minimum wage, and they are basically what used to be called colonists. They just go in, they set up their shop, they take money in, but they don't put money back into the community, and the money that comes back into the community is going to come through wages. And I want $20 an hour minimum wage at 500 plus employee corporations. Number 11, I want to restructure the public schools and allow viable alternatives to parents. I would not want my child going to a public school and listening to the trash that is being taught. In the old days, they were taught a steady curriculum. Now we see that they are being taught to hate their own government, to hate their own president, to hate people because they're of a different race, to hate people because they're of a different group. And again, all they're doing in our schools now is they're dividing by labeling everybody so they can conquer them, so that everybody feels bad. Well, I have another alternative. How about a new philosophy where we're all human beings sharing a planet, and your racist attitudes are going to go, and they're going to go as quickly as possible. And if you're one of these teachers who is protesting and talking a lot of rubbish about our government and teaching our kids a lot of rubbish about our government and not respecting a democratically elected president, you seriously need to consider a new career field, because I'm going to look at everybody who we see on social media who is promoting this, because I don't think you have the right to be teaching our kids. You're teaching poison, and you ought to be doing something else. So the last thing that I want to do, and this is along those lines, and this goes back to my first couple of items. I want to make the United States the education nation of the world. That means that we become again the city on the hill. We become the country where people come to learn new things, to learn new technologies. We are moving into a new century, into a new world where we're going to be able to explore space. And what are we now? We're sitting here on Earth fighting like apes, right? Well, we're not apes. We can go out and we can spend our money to explore and to learn and to develop and to become a wonderful set of beings that share the universe with probably many other wonderful beings. But they're just waiting for us to come along. So these are the 12 things that I want to do with my time in the Senate. And again, I do believe that I have been trained for this all my life. I have been shown a lot of horrible things. I've had a lot of bad things happen to me. I've had a lot of bad people in my life, and it's all been because of the government. So we're going to start cleaning out this government, and we're going to start to make people accountable. Now, if you like what you hear and you want to contribute to my campaign and you want to get involved, you can contact me at Heinz4, number 4, HeinzForSenate.com, or you can contribute to my campaign at P.O. Box 551, Redmond, Washington, 9803-0551. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for coming. I'm Matthew Heinz. I'm running for the United States Senate in Washington State. Thank you.